If you are experiencing foundation issues, get a free estimate from Ox Foundations.
It is 19 minutes after the hour. We're joined in a few minutes by Coach Jonathan Beverly, the head football coach and athletic director at Childersburg. And Coach, good morning to you. We missed you last week.
Good morning. Yeah, it was daughter and son weren't feeling too great last week, so I was out of action. But everybody's good this week. So
speaking of action, tough loss for the Tigers last Friday.
Yeah, it was tough going to Hanley. Very good football team down there in Roanoke, and it was a long trip for us, and battled through some injuries and stuff early and kind of set us behind the 8 ball. But, credit to our kids for finishing the game. And, we came back and we've been able to kind of put that behind us and focus on what's ahead this week.
Yeah, you go into the Hanley game coming off another tough loss the week prior, and Hanley's a solid football team. You had some injuries you had to deal with Hanley, and you look down your chart and you say, well, what do we do here?
Yeah, it was tough. It's kind of, especially in high school football, it's not like you've got 2 or 3 guys down the depth chart that are just as good as the guy in front of him, and so that, that's always tough to deal with. But injuries are part of the game, and we've been fortunate to get some guys back this week, and we feel really good about health-wise where we're at going into this week, hopefully we can avoid those injuries this week.
The numbers from last week show one thing. What did you glean coming out of the Hanley game as a positive?
For us, Xavier Garrett continued to run the football well. He's rushed for 600 yards through 5 ball games, so he's continued to have some good things happen his way. And I thought defensively, especially in the second half, we settled down and played well, and our normal guys that contribute well on that side of the ball, did a good job. Zay Youngblood, Cordell Spear, Andrew Chapman, and those guys did a good job. And I thought we had some guys step up, like Keyshawn Reynolds, who hadn't had to play a ton of defense, because he's been, such a stalwart for us on the offensive line. He stepped up and had some good drives for us on the defensive line. And so now we've got some guys stepping up and having to play both ways a little bit. And, they're doing a good job for us.
Those slow starts have been a nemesis for Childersburg the entire season so far.
They have. You find yourself, down early. You look at, the beginning of the season, the games that we've won this year, we've been able to get on top early and stay on top, and then when you want to run the football the way that we want to run the football, you can't do that down 14-0. You can't do it down 2 touchdowns because, especially, the way the game moves, and our drives typically are longer drives. It puts you in a tougher situation, when you're down early. So we've got to find a way to get on top early.
Well, tonight here in Sylacauga, it'll be Childersburg coming into town. Just 7 or 8 miles up 280 to take on a Sylacauga team that's coming off a very tough loss against Mortimer Jordan last week. It's homecoming for Sylacauga, and I don't guess it takes anything much to get Childersburg and Sylacauga going than just saying those 2 teams' names.
That's all you got to say. And all we had to tell our kids on Monday were, hey, we're playing the Aggies this week, and that's all they needed to hear. And they've done a great job with self-motivation. We haven't had to really, stoke any fires this week. The kids are focused and they're motivated. And Sylacauga is a great football team. Coach Matt Griffith does as good of a job as anybody, not just in 5A football, but around the state. We've got a tremendous amount of respect for him and the program he runs. But again, it's your rival, and there's nobody you really want to beat more than your rival.
And of course, a lot of the Childersburg kids know a lot of the Sylacauga kids. Families intertwine, and that makes it even more interesting.
It does. Families intertwine. You've got a lot of husbands and wives who some went to Childersburg, some went to Sylacauga, so they kind of houses divided there. You've got a lot of kids who go to church together, or maybe played rec ball together and things like that. So it's a tightly wound rivalry. So many intermingling parts there, which makes it more special. And this is one of the last rivalries really around in the county at our level, because a lot of the other schools for one reason or the other aren't playing us. So for us, this is kind of the big rivalry on the schedule, and for Sylacauga, it's really it's their last rivalry on the schedule as well. So that makes it even more special.
How do you get this Childersburg team jump-started once again and get off to a good start against a good Sylacauga football team?
For us, we've got to start the game with a high level of energy. One way or another, we can't, we can't start this thing out walking. We've got to start it out sprinting. And so, that's been our motivation all week. Bring energy to the table. Bring more energy, hopefully, than they bring to the table. And so for us, obviously we've still got half the season to go, and so this isn't the final contest, but it's the next contest. And so we've got to focus on this football game as if it were the last game we were going to play.
Yeah, and it's a non-region contest, but yet still a very, very important game. Jordan Ridgeway, the marquee running back for Sylacauga. Defensively, how do you kind of slow this guy down? Nobody else has.
Well, for us, you've got to try to prevent the big play. You're not going to hold him to, negative rushing yards or anything like that. That's, that would be an impossible task. But you've got to try to limit the big play. And he's not the only one. Pope is a great running back as well. So, you've got to, again, try to limit the big play, make them play another play. Don't give up the 60-yard touchdown. Of course, the way that they run the football, they're going to get some yards, but make them play the next play. Make them have to take another opportunity to try to move the football. So avoiding the big play, I think, is key. Even though, Mortimer Jordan did about as good of a job as you probably could last week against those guys, but they still both had huge runs and huge plays. So you've got to understand that as well as they run the football, they're going to churn up some yards, but just try to avoid the home run.
Yeah, offensively for Childersburg, get your quarterback back. And some people say, well, your tight end doesn't mean a whole lot, but in your scheme of things, he does.
It does. Formationally, he brings so much to the table. We were crunching numbers last weekend, and, he doesn't touch the ball 70% of the time, but what he brings to the table affects our formation 70% of the time. So if you throw away 70% of your formation, 70% of your checks, 70% of your protections and schemes, that if you go from 100% to 30%, that's a huge drop off. And so, we've had to try to, do our best to make sure that we, don't find ourselves exactly in that situation again, bringing some guys over from defense to have to, know how to play that position so that we don't find ourselves behind the 8 ball again.
Before we go, talk about this young man specifically, the tight end that is hurt. And, you talked about what he brings to the table. What about the young man himself?
Ryan Logan, he's one of our captains. He's a 4-year player for us on the varsity, 4-year starter on the baseball team as well. Just a great kid, high academic kid, and that's one of the reasons why he's so successful for us on the football field. He's so smart. He understands all of the different nuances of the game itself. And for us, it's not going to be a season-ending type injury, but not having him on the football field, it makes a big difference. And not only that, he's our long snapper. So, it affects us in special teams. It affects us, he's not only is our long snapper, but he's on just about every special teams unit, punt team, punt return, kickoff return, so he's a major player for us. And again, it's not going to be a season-ending type thing, but his presence makes a huge difference, and we've got to have some other guys step up.
All right, Coach Jonathan Beverly, head football coach and athletic director at Childersburg High School. The Tigers take on Sylacauga tonight as homecoming for the Aggies. Kick at 7 o'clock. Coach, we'll see you again next week.
Yes, sir.
Coach Jonathan Beverly, our guest this morning here on our Coach's Corner. More daybreak in a minute.